All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Tip Tuesday. Geoffrey Nance here with you. Today's topic is kind of an interesting one. It may be one where you kind of know basically everything I'm going to say, or for some of you, you guys might be like, oh, I've never heard of that thing or didn't really understand how it worked. So today's topic is about stock splits. So if you've heard that word, you may be wondering, well, what does it really mean? And basically, it I don't know, is one of those self-defining kind of phrases. It's literally where the stock is split. So you can just imagine that you're splitting an orange or apple or whatever. The stock is being split up into pieces and then it's being divvied out accordingly. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. There are two types of splits. There's a basic split or a common split, and then there's what's called a reverse split. Now, when your company is part of a reverse split, that's not really a good thing. It's basically them trying to make the stock look better than it actually is. So we'll talk a little bit about the reverse split and what that looks like and how it works really towards the end. And then we'll talk primarily more about the normal splits and what that looks like and how it could work. So we'll actually go out there and I'll show you an example from Coca-Cola, because way back in the day, now this was quite a while ago, Coca-Cola was actually splitting very often. And I'll just give you a sense of what that would look like. So how many shares would you actually own and what would your value actually be if you had been a true buy and holder? All right. So what is a stock split? All right. So stock splits are literally where the stock that has X amount of shares is going to be split into more shares. The most common and historically the kind of the main and really I think and to some extent was the only way really that most stocks used to have a stock split was called a 2-for-1. So when your stock has a 2-for-1 stock split, let me just kind of explain it the most basic way. So let's just say we had a $10 stock, and it's not going to split at $10. Normally it's going to be in the hundreds, right? You'll be way up here in the hundreds of dollars or whatever when it'll split again, but they can split at any time. But let's just say we had a $10 stock just to make our math easy, and we had 1,000 shares. So we had $10,000 invested in this trade, and they decided to do a 2-for-1 stock split. Well, what that means is that we would now get twice as many shares. So we had 1,000, now we would have 2,000, but the stock itself would be split in half. So it would go from $10 down to $5. Okay, so the stock itself split from 10 down to 5. So it's been split in half, and yet the value that I have is still the same. Well, what's happened now is I have twice as many shares, but at half the price. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, I used to have 1,000 shares at $10. Now I have twice as many shares, or 2,000 shares at $5. Now, when I do the math, I had 10,000 earlier, 1,000 shares at $10 a piece. Now I say I've got 2,000 shares, but they're at $5 a piece. I've still got $10,000 invested in this stock. So my money amount did not change, but the number of shares that I own did change. And you might be thinking, well, how does that really help? Why would anybody care about that? Well, when a stock gets more expensive, probably the one that we, pretty familiar with is Apple. Okay, so Apple was like a $700 stock. Well, for a lot of people, they're going to have a hard time buying many shares of a $700 stock. So what Apple did is they came out there and they did a little weird, and that's been happening more recently, where more of these companies have been doing these kind of odd splits. But Apple did a 7-for-1. So in other words, they took their $700 stock and made it a $100 stock. And then we see something happen with Google, but Google actually did something different. I'm actually going to share that on the screen with you guys because I want you to see this. So we're gonna look at two things here on the screen now that we know how this works, and I want you to see what Google did recently. I mean, I say recently, it's somewhat recently. But you can see over here, we're looking at our charts by trade weight. We've got ease. This will tell us whether they missed their estimate or not. I mean, obviously, on this particular date, they brought in 7 cents when they were expected to bring in 99. I mean, that's a pretty massive miss. You would think the stock would have dropped like crazy, but it really didn't. All right, so we've got ease. Sometimes we'll have a D. A D stands for a dividend. But what we're looking for right now is an S. You can see over here we have an S. And that says that on July 16, 2022, Google had a split, but it was a 20-for-1 split. All right, so we can see here the price of Google, all right, on this date would have dropped. So it was 20 times that amount. So it's a $115 stock after the split, which means it was 20 times that prior to that split, which seems kind of wild, doesn't it? I mean, that seems just God. So why would they want to do that? What is the value here of doing a split? Obviously, it makes it more accessible to more common folks, so more people can go out there and buy the stock. Now, the other thing that it does is it increases the value. So every time that stock moves up $1, you don't make $1. Now you make $20. So you're making $20 every time that stock moves up $1. Well, you can imagine how valuable that would be if you had multiple hundreds of thousands of shares or millions of shares. And now instead of making $1 on a dollar move, you're now making $20 on a single dollar move. So the value for the true buy and holder could be substantial if they are able to hold that stock for a long enough time and it recovers. Now, obviously, when you have a 20-for-1, that's very different than the much more, at least historically, common 2-for-1. So I'm going to take you over here to Coca-Cola for a bit. Now we're going to go back in time here a while. I'm actually going to, now you can see they have dividends and stuff. We're going to go to the maximum here. We'll just do a monthly should be fine. All right. Well, now we've got all these D's and E's, so I'm gonna switch that back. Let's not do a monthly. Let's go out here and do the maximum on a weekly here because we need to be able to see some of this stuff. Did that get any better? And it's still kind of a mess down here. All right. So as we scroll through this, you can see all of the dividends they're paying out, right? So dividends, and then you got the E's and whatnot. So what I want you guys to be able to see here is that when Coca-Cola began to split, what happened is the value obviously got cut in half, but when they did that, the price was impacted substantially as well. And when you think about that perspective, you kind of start to go, wait a second here, what does that really mean? Well, imagine with me, if you will, and let's go ahead and take this back here during this stretch. What'd you just do? What happened here? Oh, I don't know why it's doing that. But we wanted to go back here a little bit more. What's it doing here? I don't know what I did to it. I messed it up. But you can imagine here, if you will, that we were looking at this and we were seeing a split. So let's just kind of walk through this because this is what Coca-Cola did way back in the day. All right, so they did a 2-for-1. So let's just imagine that Coca-Cola was. I'm going to get rid of this because it's messed up. So let's go ahead and refresh that. Imagine that Coca-Cola. We'll just say it was at $20 or something like that. All right. And they do a 2-for-1 split. So when Coca-Cola does a 2-for-1 split, let's assume we had 1,000 shares. So Coca-Cola does that split, and then all of a sudden they the stock goes back up. So the stock dropped from 20 down to $10. Now we have 2,000 shares at $10, but the stock goes back up to $20. Well, guess what, guys? Now, as that stock raised in price from, $10 to $20, we doubled, but we didn't just double. Why do we not just double? So obviously the stock doubled, but what actually happened to us? Well, as that stock went from 10 to 20, we didn't just have 1,000 shares this time. We had 2,000 shares. Now, when that stock got back up to that price, they split again. Well, now we have 2,000 shares, but we get split in half. Now we have 4,000 shares. And then that stock split again. So now instead of having 4,000 shares, we have 8,000 shares. All right. And then they split again. And then we had 16,000 shares. So remember, guys, we started with 1,000 shares at $10, but now we have 16,000 shares. So imagine, if you will, that you were in this trade in Coca-Cola here, and you had 16,000 shares, and that stock went up to, we'll say, currently it's about $54. So if we were to go out here and say, you know what does that look like? If I were really holding this stock and it moved, and I had 16,000 shares, so 16000 times $53 equals $848,000. And guys, listen, you would have done nothing. So again, your original investment was $10,000, and that original $10,000 investment, if you're still holding it till this day, could be worth almost $1 million. Now, you had to buy and hold, and that's a serious buy and hold position there, to have been in the same stock and ridden it out through all those bear markets and then all the bull markets. But you can see very easily there where if a stock begins to split multiple times, then the amount of money I can make in a relatively small amount of time is substantial. And to think that you could go from $10,000 to $848,000 just by buying and holding is pretty incredible on what we would consider to be basically a blue chip stock. And when we say blue chip, there aren't a whole lot of people out there that have never heard of Coca-Cola. So the fact that we have the ability to do that is pretty incredible. And that's the value of a stock split. And that's why you'll see some of these big investors pushing for stock splits, because again, it increases their ability to make money faster. So they make more money on the same move. So instead of having 1,000 shares, they have 2,000 or 4,000 or 8,000 or 16,000 shares, and they're basically making a dollar, but on 16,000 shares instead of just 1,000 shares. So that's why they're going to push for stock splits. The average investor can buy, and that would of course increase the price as well. But just the fact that the stock has the ability to increase in price, and now they're basically making twice as much money on a similar move, is very appealing to investors, obviously. Now that we've talked about a common split, let's talk very briefly here before we close up today about a reverse split. A reverse split is exactly as it sounds. So we'll go back to our $10,000 investment. So we have a $10 stock, but that stock, we have 1,000 shares, drops from $10 a share down to $1 a share. And so obviously we've lost a substantial amount of my money. We've lost 90% of our value, right? As the stock dropped from 10 down to 1. Well, they want to make that stock look more appealing. So what they are inclined to do is a reverse split. Let's just say they did a 1 for 10. Well, now what they're going to do is they're going to take our 1,000 shares, multiply that times 10. Or sorry, they're going to divide that. They're going to divide that by 10. So instead of having 1,000 shares, we're only now going to have 100 shares. Okay. So they're going to take our 1,000 shares, divide them by 10, and we only have 100 shares, but they're going to move the price of the stock from $1 to $10. So now we have a new $10 stock, but we only have 100 shares. So we're still down a ton of money, right? We still only have $1,000 in this trade at this time, but they're trying to make that stock look more appealing to investors. Like they go out there and they say that stock's only $1. That company must not be any good, because normally, to go from 10 to 1, there were a lot of things going wrong. And there are a lot of things happening that were really negatively impacting that stock. So they try to trick people a little bit, make the books look a little bit better, and think, oh, this stock was $1 stock, now it's a $10 stock. Something must be happening here. This is a good thing. And the reality is, a lot of times it does not improve the financial viability or sustainability of that company. And it ends up just dropping from a $10 stock back down to a $1 stock again before they eventually go out of business. But every now and then it works. People get fooled and think, oh, something's happening here with this company. They're turning things around, and the price can go up. But again, now we're at a substantially lower amount of shares. So even as it goes up, we're making less money per share than we would have before that reverse stock split. So stock splits are great, especially if you're a buy and holder. Reverse stock splits are not good because normally that means that your stock is in trouble and they're just trying to make it look a little bit better without actually making improvements to improve the sustainability and viability of the company itself and what they're able to do with it. So thank you for joining us today, guys. Learning a little bit more about splits, normal splits and how they work, and reverse stock splits and how that works as well. Appreciate you guys joining us each week, and we'll see you next time.